Trevon Diggs and Donovan Wilson could be playing for their jobs in 2025. We'll explain why next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we're going to take a look at three players who could be playing for their jobs in 2025. And let's start with a couple big-name defensive players. Let's start with Trevon Diggs. We've talked about Trevon over the last couple of weeks, but it sure seems like, given his contract situation, his health situation, Landon, and kind of some of the stuff off the field when it comes to maybe not rehabbing as hard as he needs to be, this could potentially be it for Trevon.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point, when you've played out your guaranteed money, there's been all kinds of issues that, whether perceived or real, it does feel like, as we've talked about, that there's some kind of animosity going on, or at least there had been some animosity going on. And then when you look at the DaRon Bland situation, as he's up on a contract year, you've got Savon Revell that they've drafted. So, and they traded for, we can't forget that they did trade for another corner as well. It's not like he's necessarily a Diggs replacement, but they are making a lot of moves at the cornerback position. So you have to wonder if this goes south, or if he comes back and doesn't play as well. Is this a situation where he could be traded or cut, or it just you wonder how long the leash is for Diggs this season if he doesn't come back and play good football again this year.
Well, and let's think about how long it's been. So 2024, up and down, would you say, as a corner? I mean, I think there was more ups than downs, but I think generally kind of average. 2023, he missed almost the entire season. He got hurt between week 2 and 3. 2022, he was good. He didn't have the interceptions that he had in 2021, but I actually thought he was a pretty good overall corner. We're just a long time removed since that magical 2021 season where he led the league in interceptions.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make an argument that 2022 season, he may have been playing actual better football.
He was way more consistent game to game.
But you're right. Like, that's still a long time ago. And again, with the contract in the state that it's in, and listen, the thing about Diggs is that it's always been a very up and down situation with him, right? It's just it's very fast or famine, and it's like, if he doesn't get a bunch of interceptions, then sometimes you wonder if it's worth it, if it's the bad times are worth it. You add in the fact that the game has started to move more towards running the football, and that specifically is an area where he really, really struggles, and you just don't know if that has gotten any better. And especially as his health is kind of become a problem, you wonder if that can get better at this point. So there's just a lot of things kind of hovering around that situation. Nonetheless, obviously, including the fact that he has a big cap number, and that cutting him really wouldn't cost the Cowboys a ton of money.
No, let's look at the contract really quickly. They can cut him before June 1 in the offseason. It would save them $12.5 million. But if they designate him as a post-June 1 cut, they could save $15.5 million. Now, they would spread out some of those savings, but $15.5 million in savings, that would pay for most of DaRon Bland's new contract if that becomes something you want to do. Let's say DaRon Bland earns a $20 million a year contract. Cutting Diggs and giving it to Bland, it's not. I don't think that's off the table at all.
I mean, it's something that they have to be considering. I mean, it's just like it's such an obvious move, and Bland is a guy that kind of more fits the mold of the type of player that they want, right? Like a guy that's versatile inside and out. He's a hard worker, team player. He plays, inside the boundaries of the rules the way that they like, as far as showing up to the facility, rehabbing with Britt Brown and those sort of things. So I just wonder if they aren't just looking at that situation and thinking, man, unless Diggs comes and blows us away early in this season with his recovery and with the way he plays post recovery, we don't want to let Deron Bland walk out the door. And if Diggs is the reason that we do that, I think that they probably would end up regretting it.
All right, let's talk about the safeties. I want to mention both Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker. So Donovan Wilson has a void year. He'll technically be a free agent in 2026. Now the Cowboys could bring him back probably at a fairly cheap price, but Malik Hooker is the other safety. Malik Hooker will have $2 million in dead cap next year. They can cut him before June 1st, save $7 million. I wonder if both safeties are playing for the jobs, because I wouldn't be surprised if they just decide to completely revamp that position. Those guys are both older. Donovan Wilson will be 31 next year. Malik Hooker will be 30. Maybe they don't want to have two 30-plus-year-old safeties in the secondary.
Maybe, but I think, the difference between the two to me is that Hooker has a skill set that I don't know that the other safeties necessarily have in this secondary, right?
Yes.
Like that's the thing, is that Wanye Thomas and Marquise Bell both could probably step in and do a pretty darn good job playing the Donovan Wilson role if they needed to today. The thing that Wilson brings and has brought in the past is just a high level of variance. He'll force a bunch of fumbles. He'll create turnovers. He'll create big plays. The problem is always been he'll create big plays for the offense as well. Yep. So I think the last few years, it's been the reason that we've seen him more and that he got a big contract is that he had kind of reduced the number of big plays that he had given up. And it had been a lot of kind of continued big play creation, turnovers, fumbles, interceptions without, a lot of boneheaded mistakes. I feel like that's regressed a little bit these last 2 years, maybe. So I think, this is another new defensive coaching staff that is not beholden to him at all. If they come in here and they like what they see from a young Wanye Thomas and the versatility that he can provide, I think that's one of the things that they're probably looking at when they're playing him in the slot and doing all the things that they're doing in OTAs and then this week, in mini camps. I think that this is where you're seeing, hey, can we get more out of the position by playing Wanye Thomas and potentially saving some money by letting him go? I think Wilson's been fantastic, but if he isn't going to be that kind of high floor, high ceiling guy, then he probably isn't worth the money necessarily that we've been paying him so far.
Yeah, and I'll just say for Malik Hooker, I really like Malik Hooker. I think he's still a good player, but they might view, hey, we can save $7 million or put that money towards a younger safety, get a little bit more athletic, or let's use that $7 million to go address another position and draft our safety, in round 1, round 2, round 3, or whatever. And maybe that's how they continue to not pay a lot of money at that position. I don't know. It just feels like I would be shocked if these are your two starting safeties at this time next year. Like, I think they're going to move on from at least one, if not two.
I mean, they did put money on behind Marquise Bell and Wanye Thomas. They didn't just let them walk out the door. No. And on top of that, what position did they pay the most undrafted free agent money to? It was a safety nickel corner guy. So they potentially are spending some money here in a position that they don't normally spend money at. So that could portend a change to the position.
All right, let's talk about Terrence Steel, who I think is another player, if he has a so-so or down year, could potentially be on the chopping block. Let's talk about his role and future with the Cowboys next. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, so you can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, and your spending in one place, so you can stop managing your money and start building your wealth. My family has started using Monarch Money over the last 6 months, and I can't tell you how much money we are wasting on pointless stuff like food delivery or coffee runs. But now we are budgeting smarter and we are saving more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're discussing 3 players who could potentially be playing for the jobs in 2025. And let's go to Terence Steel. This one's tough because Terence Steel has been a starter now for several years. I mean, we're on like year 6 now of Terence Steel starting.
Yeah.
He'll be 29 next offseason. The Cowboys can cut him before June 1st, Landon. $9 million in dead money, 8.7 in cap savings, or if they designate him as a post June 1 cut, they can save $14 million against the cap. And I think that's how you're going to have to weigh it. Is Terence Steele a $14 million player? I think we'll know after this year.
I think the other option here too is if he plays well, would you be opposed to seeing just what he's looking at to extend him? I mean, he is, like you said, only 29 years old. That isn't very old.
Well, he's still, not including 2025, still has 3 years left on his deal.
So but I mean, still, like maybe add some void years, and like I'm saying,
I mean, you can keep pushing some of the money. I mean, he's got, he's all locked up all the way through the 2028 season.
I don't hate the fact. Listen, I think this is a big fulcrum for the whole Cowboys offensive line, how Terence Steele plays this coming year, because I do think he played decent football last year. I think he played good football last year. I'll say that. I think the problem is that he still had too many penalties. Yeah. And I think the hope is that in this new system with Connor Riley and Clayton Adams, that we specifically heard Duke talk about throwing the outside hand and how Terrence seemed very uncomfortable with that technique, and that Solari was the one who was kind of forcing that on Terence Steele, and that it was causing him some issues. So the hope is that with a new coach, some new techniques, you get something closer to 2022 Terence Steele, where 2021 Terence Steele, where you really did see a very good player who was good in the run game and in the pass. And I will also say this too: when Terence Steele was at his best and at his most valuable was when he was able to get hip to hip with Zach and run duo and push guys off the line of scrimmage. I think they're going back to that brand of football, and I think having the kind of big body guard next to him to push things around a little bit is going to help his play as well. And I also think that Clayton Adams, a guy coming from Arizona, as we've talked about, I think they're going to play some more 12 personnel this year. So I do think that Terence Steele is another one of these guys who, despite playing next to a rookie this year, is set up to have one of the better seasons he's had in a little bit. He's healthy. He's the veteran, which is crazy, the veteran of this offensive line.
I know.
But I'm thinking that, with just a little bit of better talent, with some health next to him on his left, maybe some more consistent tight end play on his right, and a more of a run-oriented offensive attack, I think he's going to really have a bounce back year.
Here's my hot take. I don't think it matters how poorly Terence Steele plays. They're not going to cut him for this reason. I think they like the personality. They like how hard he works. He does have experience playing both sides. Now, he's been a right tackle only in the NFL, but I think they would view it as, okay, maybe let's draft somebody high or let's move some guys around. He could be an expensive swing tackle, but somebody that we know has got a lot of experience that we can plug in. I know you can save $14 million if you designate him as a post June 1 cut, but it's hard to find even below average offensive tackles in the league. I think they would rather just hold on to the asset and eat the money if they had to.
And I think he's one of these guys that if he has talent next to him, he can be a plus right tackle in the NFL, like a positive influence, especially in the run game. And that's why, the addition of Booker is important for him, because I do think it's going to help him kind of get back to the brand of physical football that ends up helping him in the pass game as well, just because he gets to beat up on defensive ends a little bit before having to go backwards. So I'm a guy that I'm bullish on Terence Steele, because I do think that they've done all the things that they've done to kind of help other guys, in this offensive line, are going to help Terence Steele maybe more than anybody.
I just think if he were to struggle this year, they'll bring in some competition, or they'll just move guys around where now he's competing for snaps rather than just giving him the job this year, which, I mean, they are, but he's obviously the best guy for that right tackle job. But you know what I mean? Like, if he struggles this year, they're either going to draft somebody, they'll move, maybe Tyler Guyton over to right tackle and draft another left tackle. But I don't see that happening, because I think I agree with you. I think Terence Steele is going to have a nice season. I think this is going to be a nice bounce back year for him.
Normally I would say it's tough playing next to a rookie and that sort of thing, but Booker's such a professional coming into the league already, just a high floor guy. I don't think he's going to be. I think he's going to be assignment sound, because I think he's going to be obsessed with it. And so I just think that it's going to be about getting some chemistry with Terence Steele, but he's not going to have to kind of be just watching over his shoulder this whole time with a rookie he can't trust. I think he's going to provide an actual steady presence, because, again, even though he's technically played next to Zach Martin for the last few years. Zach's been hurt and the shell of himself these last few years, even when he's been on the field. And Hoffman's been good. I think has played well, but I think having Terence Steele out there has helped him, and just having a higher tier of player next to Steele is going to help Steele play a lot better football.
I feel like if you were to tell me, like, one non-superstar or big name player, if you were to tell me before the season how they were going to play, I could probably tell you what the Cowboys were going to do this upcoming year. And I think Steele is that player. Like, if Steele plays really well, let's say he's a top 20 offensive tackle in the league, or even go higher. Let's say he's a top 15 tackle in the league. I feel pretty good that the Cowboys offense is going to be awesome, right? But if he really struggles, and we'll get to Tyler Guyton in a little bit, and you've got a rookie right guard and a second-year center, I could see a situation where this offensive line maybe holds this team back from making the postseason.
I mean, look, it's a canary in the coal mine situation, right? Where it's like the offensive line is that for the whole team in a lot of ways, right? Because I think the offense will go as the offensive line goes, and I think the offensive line will go as Tyler Guyton and Terence Steele go, and how they adjust to the changes that this team made in the offseason to kind of help support their play. And I agree with you. Terence Steele may be the biggest indicator of that, because he's a veteran. At the very minimum, you know what you've got kind of on a general basis with Terence Steele. So I think he's going to be a good litmus test for what you're getting out of Connor Riley and Clayton Adams. If you get the best version of Terence Steele, I think you're looking at a situation where, hey, the coaching worked. You're getting a guy who's comfortable with what he's doing, and he's playing well. And if Guyton hits, man, I mean, to the moon with the Cowboys offense. And I think you really have something if you've got both of these tackle playing really good football.
Speaking of Tyler Guyton has been working out with a Dallas Cowboy legend. I think that's fair to say. We'll tell you who it is next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show as training camps get closer, and I promise they are. We're about a month and a half away. And with moves being made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, let's talk about the other tackles. We talked about Terence Steele. Let's start with Tyler Guyton, the Cowboys' first-round pick from 2024. Nick Harris from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram tweeted out a picture on Sunday that got Cowboy fans all excited. Tyler Guyton was working with Tyron Smith, the Cowboys' future Hall of Fame left tackle, and that's just got to be so encouraging for Cowboy fans. At least it seems like he's putting in the work and he's taking this seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what the forum was, but I think it was just like in an interview about Tyler Guyton. Someone was talking about how the Tyron Smith retirement ceremony that they had at the Star was very inspiring for Gayton. So I wonder if that wasn't, and I know that they spoke at that event. So I wonder if that wasn't kind of the impetus for this whole situation. But it just kind of feeds back to the conversation we started in the last segment, right? Where these offensive tackles are going to be really, really huge for not just the offense, but the whole team. And I think Guyton, more so than Steele, as we said, was a big question mark, just a big unknown. I mean, I think last year felt like a wash in a lot of ways. You saw some good play, you saw some real regression, you saw some injury, you saw a guy who really struggled to come back from an injury, and a coaching staff that clearly wasn't comfortable putting a hurt Tyler Guyton back into that game. So we just didn't really know. We hadn't really heard anything about him in the offseason for long periods of time. There was some cryptic tweeting that went on with Duke, and I think a lot of people kind of took that and ran with it a little bit. But I think that, since then we've seen some pictures of him at OTAs. He looks like he's clearly, reshaped his body. He's talked about reshaping his body and about in the offseason, the kind of changes that he's made to his health regimen, which included his diet and sleeping and exercise and stretching, which I thought was a really important thing to kind of get that lower body flexibility, which was I think that was something was missing from his game, and I think probably promoted to some of the injury issues that he was dealing with as well. So I just think that since probably in the last month or since OTAs have started, we've gotten a lot of positive reports, including, Schottenheimer kind of going out of his way to talk about how hard he's working. So I think it's really positive, but it's still, very nerve-wracking, right? Because it's so much is relying on this guy not only coming in here and taking that starting job, but also taking a step beyond that and being a good starter, at least a decent starter, so that you can have a nice floor for this offensive line. Because you look at the other pieces on this offensive line, and Guyton to me is the one piece that in a weak link system that is most important about who your worst piece is. Guyton to me is just that guy hovering there. You feel like he could be the worst piece, but where does that floor start? Is it way down here or is it way up there?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm optimistic. His body looks different. He seems like he's taking things seriously. But I do think Asim Richards, the swing tackle that the Cowboys drafted 3 years ago now, he played 2 games last year where he was basically the full-time starter, one against Philadelphia in week 10 and then another in week 18 against the Commanders. In those 2 games at left tackle, Landon, one quarterback hit, 3 hurries, and I think 5 total pressures. And there's a lot of pass blocking snaps because the Cowboys were throwing the ball a lot in those games.
Yeah.
And he held up well. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be a Pro Bowl tackle or he's the next Tyron Smith, but he did a pretty admirable job stepping in at left tackle. And it seems like he's getting the first shot at being the backup left tackle again this season.
Yeah, he certainly earned it. I mean, we talked about it. Like you mentioned his success when he's gotten into the game. I've been a big fan of his since he got drafted in 23. I think it was 2023. And just like immediately came in and was just like a guy who played above his pedigree and was got it, worked hard, looked clean, had good technique. I think the issue with him is that he's always going to be a little bit small. I think he is kind of more of a zone offensive lineman. So I think scheme wise, this scheme may not do him any favors, but he's so talented,
especially as a run blocker. He's already had some problems as a run blocker. I think as a pass blocker, he can be fine.
I was exactly going to say that. I think the issue is going to be when he's trying to move people off the ball. He just doesn't have the same kind of size. Guyton's got 40 pounds on him, 35 pounds on him or something like that. So like that, there's a reason that they're, pushing the guys that are bigger and stronger. They feel like they can actually move people off the ball and be plus run players if they can figure things out. I think with Richardson, you've got a guy that, you can put out there and he can give you solid snaps and pass protection if you need him to. He could be a shield blocker, right? But I just, you're not pulling him across the formation into a hole to dig out a defensive tackle or dig out a linebacker. He's good on the move, and he's good at kind of as a good mirror athlete and pass protection. And I think he certainly is a guy that could be a plus player as a swing tackle, because they're just, I mean, look around the depth of the NFL. It's atrocious. So the fact that you could get a guy like this still on a rookie contract, and potentially have him as your third tackle, especially in a situation where you're just uncertain at the offensive tackle position, it's a real benefit to the Cowboys.
He's actually one of the smallest left tackles in the league because he's 6'4". He's not
Yeah.
even 310 pounds, but he does a good job of staying in front of the pass rushers. One of the things that I would like to see Landon this year is they've moved him all around because they're trying to just get him on the roster early in his career. But he's played left guard and right tackle. But now that they have some depth on the offensive line with, Hoffman and Bass and Robert Jones and Sadiq Charles, maybe he's not going to have to take as many snaps at guard and he can just focus at left tackle. And maybe this is the year we see him take the biggest step forward. He's not going to beat out Tyler Guyton, at least I don't think so. But if he could become, somebody like Chuma Udoka, where if they're in the game, you don't feel awful, we'll settle for that. Like, we'll be thrilled with that.
I mean, frankly, he showed you that last year, right?
Yeah,
like, I mean, considering how bad the offensive line was at certain points, and he wasn't. And we just talked about it, offensive line's a weak link system, and as bad as the offensive line was at certain points last year, when he was in it, it certainly wasn't him that was always the problem, So, he certainly looks like he belongs when he's out there. That's all you can ask when you're talking about backup offensive linemen.
Yeah,
right?
and that's all you want is just make it so you're not the weak link out there. And hopefully this offensive line doesn't have any weak links. They've put a lot of investments into that unit, Landon. I think it's time for those to start paying off.
Yeah, like we said, it's the canary in the coal mine situation for the entire team. The offensive line has got to produce with all the investment that's been put into it.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.